What is good, guys and gals, and welcome to the Films and Pixels podcast, episode 54. I'm your host, Afif. Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't have a lot for today. It's a bit of a short notice, but there are just only a couple of big topics that I do want to speak of. First is a movie review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, the big action movie blockbuster of the summer. Although there's going to be more blockbuster movies coming in June and July, but that's for another time. And plus, rumors of a Microsoft handheld, which there were leaked images, but it could be on halt with Asus collaborating. But I'll explain all of those details. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for those who have tuned in from beginning to end, watching and listening, whether it's on YouTube, El-Jamil, Spotify, or any other platform, Deezer, for example. I do appreciate it so much. Any engagement, please, that would be much appreciated. It would be great. Likes, comments, shares, and all that, and so forth. But yeah, I don't want to take too much time, so let's get going. Excuse me. First, my review for this new Mission Impossible movie, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, obviously produced by Tom Cruise, starring him in this movie along with the cast of Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg and Haley Atwell and so forth. No Vanessa Kirby in this movie, in case any of you are still wondering. But still, it's still a very good cast. And yes, it does an excellent job of closing the franchise as a whole. Now, of course, it has some of the usual that you would expect. Big action set pieces, Tom Cruise doing dangerous stunts, drama as well. A lot of some, if you're not really caught up, like complicated exposition. And really, this time, the big antagonist, although there is the antagonist Gabriel that we've known for a while, but the big antagonist introduced in Dead Reckoning Part 1 is the Entity, which is like a dangerous AI ready to set off nuclear missiles everywhere and so forth. So obviously, this movie sort of went into the sci-fi territory, as if this movie is trying to tell us an AI program is ready to launch missiles, access codes, launch missiles everywhere, and cause the apocalypse and death and all that and so forth. So of course, it's going to be like that. That sort of kind of movie. It does a great job as well. Of course, everyone was excellent. I did like the cinematography, excellent set pieces as well. Now, of course, the movie itself, it can be a bit complicated as well. There are a lot of tense moments, especially even as the third act goes on. You just get this tense feeling in the final seconds, hopefully destruction and chaos doesn't happen, as well as while Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt tries to retrieve this, I don't want to call it a shiny MacGuffin, but this high-tech gizmo that is supposed to stop the all-world destruction that could have happened. And great locations going too, of course, the snow areas and the submarine going through submarines and so forth, with politics, politics with U.S. presidents and submarine ships. It does well. Pacing is great. There are some issues here and there with pacing, a lot of talking and then a little bit of action, so forth. So it just feels a bit tedious and overloading, and that's kind of the general consensus anyway, which I can agree. First act kind of feels a bit tedious with a lot of exposition. And of course, expect a lot of callbacks to previous movies, which do happen often. It tries to connect all of these threads together. So that's bound to happen anyway. So, and is this really the final Mission Impossible movie? Some people say yes, I do think it is. No more Tom Cruise involved. I mean, at some point you have to just conclude a major action franchise, and this movie does that. Even though a lot of people will think, well, Tom Cruise, for someone who has creative input in this movie, will ask or have someone he knows, a younger version, a young actor like Glenn Powell, to take over the role. Maybe reboot the franchise or some sort of Mission Impossible spin-off or something like that. So is this like one of the best movies? Does this rank really high? No, it's like, I would say generally favorable, average, slightly above average in terms of like ranking the Mission Impossible films. So this one tries to tie all of these narrative arcs together from previous films, a lot of callbacks and flashbacks and so forth. And like try to make this big villain, this Gabriel guy threatening. He kind of is, but really like this entity everyone is trying to stop and cooperate and whatever, like that is really the big threat that just, all of a sudden is there. But we knew about the entity in Dead Reckoning. I kind of like Dead Reckoning more than the Final Reckoning, but this is still a solid movie anyway. As I was sitting, like, I was like kind of tense, like, oh my god, will this really happen? Will this really happen? Like, it does really a good job of keeping the audience on its toes, but still excellent nonetheless. Excuse me. It's kind of like a sentimental send-off, especially like, if you could remember, like, there's a big, I don't want to spoil it, about like a death of a major character, so I just want to prepare you that. But of course, like Tom Cruise, always excellent with the stunts as well. I mean, he has a thing with like going, like climbing into planes and doing something dangerous. It's kind of like an adrenaline rush for him. But yeah, like I've someone who's seen like, I think all of them. I'm pretty sure I've seen all of them or most of them. Like, if you're invested into this franchise, you'll like this movie. Will you love it though, even if you're new? No. Even if you're a longtime fan, will you really love this movie? Maybe not, but you'll definitely get a enjoy out of it. You'll definitely like the direction. I just think other movies like maybe Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, I just thought those were better movies. I think those are some of the best movies in the franchise. But that's it. Maybe like the only issue is maybe like the pacing on its actual story. Because there's a lot of complexity. It's kind of, if you're not really into the story, if you don't really remember what happens, if you don't find like a YouTube video of like everything up to the Final Reckoning, you'll get confused. But again, like action, thriller, espionage movies are kind of like that. So expect a lot of exposition to try to fill you in. And definitely worth it on the big screen. If you could watch it in IMAX, great. It's still worth it in a regular big screen. But I'm sure it's just as excellent in IMAX. So yeah, definitely a must-see for fans of the franchise. But just be aware of some confusing exposition and pacing issues with the story. Action is still good, even though I would have liked to see more, but still very good action as well. But still good send-off. It may be imperfect, but likely a conclusion to Ethan Hunt's story. The kind of send-off that he deserves. So, and it's not very tragic. I don't want to spoil it, but I don't want it to, but I'm just glad it's not a tragic ending to Ethan Hunt's story. I just hope nothing tragic happens by the time the Fast and Furious franchise ends, but I'm assuming that will be next year. I'm assuming that will happen in 2026. Okay. With that aside, go to the second and final topic. Just on this Microsoft handheld that they were working on in collaboration with Asus, like something like a second Asus ROG Ally X2 or something. That could have been like a Xbox only handheld. In fact, even minutes ago, I'm pretty sure I read something about like maybe not likely a next gen Xbox hardware, considering the sales and even now their direction of going more and more into a third party direction. Like even after a time, the exclusive deal, like giving a lot of the supposed exclusives to PlayStation. So like after a year or so. So this is what we're seeing. And even shifting their focus to having Windows 11 in handheld. So this is exactly what's happening. They're just going to pause it for now. Just focus on the efficiency of Windows 11, how it can do on third-party handheld PC gaming-like systems, and how can it work with, such as, with the Steam OS and the Epic Games app and other devices and so forth. There was a planned handheld with Asus it was just called Project Keenan for now. They like to have code names, just like back then with the Xbox One X, the Project Scorpio that was unveiled in 2017. It is still a possibility, an Xbox handheld exclusive. That could be the next big thing. I mean, maybe they will go away from the console hardware for the TVs, because they're still selling, but, not enough to catch up with the PlayStation 5. And just when you think like the Series S, although priced cheap as an lower entry for beginners only, a lot of the performance issues, a lot of the problems that developers hate about it are popping up. And I'm sure this new handheld, maybe it's meant to compete against the PlayStation Portal, although that one is just really remote device streaming if you have a PS5 only, even though there is like a cloud gaming beta included. And plus, Nintendo really on a good roll, on a hot streak since early 2017 with the whole Switch line consoles. But let's just see how the Switch 2 does. There's been some concern and controversy regarding the pricing of Switch 2 games and of their just licensed keys and the price of the actual Switch 2 itself at $450. And then the Switch 2 bundled, I think, with Mario Kart World at $500. There's been like some concern and controversy, the messaging. And like I've said before, I just thought it was strange. The tech demo game called World Tour is paid for $10 and not free included, just to justify the price more. Like it would have been better value, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, so I just think like slowly but surely, if not now, even though I don't think Microsoft should like focus on this new handheld only thing, I'm sure like a lot of the third party hardware, whether it's like Asus or the Logitech, and we've seen the Steam Deck as well, really being a big component of this as well. Of course, since the Nintendo Switch consoles, they're always cheap, it'll be hard to compete against them. But I mean, will these companies of the Sony and the Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, let me rephrase that, will both of them that were always console hardware for the TV transition to like handheld only, if it means making the gaming, the gaming industry much cheaper, because like it's becoming more and more expensive. And I've said before, like the Xbox hardware and the accessories, like they had to become even more expensive. And so that's just going to be difficult for people to justify. So there has to be a cheaper solution for next gen, I think. Yeah. I mean, like as I said, PS5 Pro, expensive. But yeah, Xbox handheld production halted for now. We're focusing on Windows 11 and third-party devices. I think that's a smart decision. Okay, well, guys and gals, that pretty much wraps it up for the Films and Pixels podcast, episode 54. I would like to thank you all so much for tuning in from beginning to end. If you haven't done so before, please subscribe. It is much appreciated. And like I always say, comment, like, share, and so forth. That kind of effort is much appreciated. Thank you so much for listening and watching me from beginning to end. This is Afif El-Jamil signing off. Good day and good night.